Today on Back to the Bible. How do you choose to trust God when you're dealing with trials you didn't sign up for and situations you don't deserve? Hi, I'm Pastor Nat Crawford, and life isn't fair. That was the case with Joseph. He just couldn't catch a break in the short term. But what do we see when we look at his life as a whole? Stand by to be inspired. Arnie, Cole, and Cara Whitney will be here for a candid conversation on this very topic about choosing faith over fear. I also have a devotional resource I'd like to send to you. It's called Win the Day, Daily Steps for Overcoming Anger and Fear. I wrote this to help you navigate the chaotic times we live in, and today we'd like to send it to you as a thanks for your gift to Back to the Bible. Request your copy at 1-800-759-2425. 1-800-759-2425. Or, if you prefer to give online, visit backtothebible.org. Now, on to our lesson. Let's fast forward a bit in the story and see what happens as a result of Joseph's honesty. Joseph goes to visit his brothers as they graze their goats. Ticked off, his brothers devise a plan to kill Joseph. But his younger brother Judah suggested that they capture Joseph and they sell him into slavery. And that is exactly what they do. Now, I want you to remember this story the next time you think that your family is dysfunctional. I mean, this makes you feel pretty good. Well, Joseph, he ends up in Egypt and inside Potiphar's house. Potiphar is the captain of the bodyguard for the Pharaoh. So let's pick up the story in Genesis chapter 39, beginning in verse 2. The Lord was with Joseph, so he succeeded in everything he did as he served in the home of his Egyptian master. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph, giving him success in everything he did. From the day Joseph was put in charge of his master's household and property, the Lord began to bless Potiphar's household for Joseph's sake. All his household affairs ran smoothly, and his crops and livestock flourished. With Joseph there, he didn't worry about a thing. Joseph was faithful. His faithfulness would send him on an unexpected journey. He ends up in the home of a modern-day 5-star general. The text says that the Lord was with Joseph. And the result was that Joseph was put in charge of Potiphar's household. You see, in just 5 short verses, it says that all Joseph did for Potiphar prospered or was blessed. When people are faithful, things get done. They get done and they get done well. They get done and they get done on time. They get done with the right attitude. They get done no matter what. Not only are people reliable because of what they do, but they also hold people accountable. Joseph, he's in charge of all of Potiphar's house. This means that he was the VP of HR. I mean, maybe you're in management today. Maybe you're not employed right now. Maybe you're not in a traditional leadership role. But rest assured, you influence people. And when you delegate responsibility or people volunteer, your faithfulness is measured by their faithfulness. You see, you aren't helping them or yourself by not holding them accountable. What gets measured gets done. What gets done gets rewarded. This was true for Joseph. You see, the work he did and the people he led resulted in success. And this is the result of being faithful. And his success, it did not go unnoticed. I mean, look what happens in the remainder of verse 7. And Potiphar's wife soon began to look at him lustfully. "Come and sleep with me," she demanded. But Joseph refused. "Look," he told her, "my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held nothing back from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God." Here it is. Joseph got tested. Joseph worked in the presence of Potiphar's wife, who took notice of Joseph. She came on to him and asked him to have sex with her. But remember, Joseph was reliable. He was honest. So what does he do? He refused. But notice something, and notice it because it's important. Look at what Joseph says. Joseph makes a case, but his case begins from man's perspective. He says, hey, Potiphar has put me in charge of everything he owns. I'm in charge of it. It's in my hands. Nothing is out of my permission except you. You are off limits. You are his wife. Now, let's be honest. That is where a lot of us would leave it. We'd recognize that we have these rules, these man-made restrictions. I mean, if I commit this act of indiscretion, I could lose my job. We would think, well, we could lose our family, we could lose our retirement, etc. But notice that that is not where Joseph stops. He doesn't just give the man-made reasons why he shouldn't have this affair. Joseph says this, "How then could I do this great evil and sin against God?" Wow. Joseph was honest in relation to who he was, in relation to God. He was committed to God's love, and because of that love for God and God's faithfulness to him, he was obedient to God first and foremost. Yes, he was aware of the consequences to his sin, but it was so much bigger than that. He was committed to God. That was the sole reason why he would not commit this act of indiscretion. I pray that when you and I get tempted to sin, I pray that we will give our real reasons, that we love God more than anything else. Potiphar's wife, she came at him day after day. What is Joseph's response? He does what anyone of integrity should do. He fled. He runs out. He gets out of there as fast as he can. He can't take it anymore. But what does Potiphar's wife do? She grabs his coat. This results in Joseph being wrongly accused. You see, one moment Joseph is the man, and in a moment it appears that Joseph became a long-term loser in life because he ends up in jail. Why would he end up in jail? For doing the right thing. But that's not the end of the story. As we read on, we find that Joseph, he remains faithful. The chief cupbearer and the baker, they end up in prison for making Pharaoh angry. And the Bible tells us that Joseph is put in charge of them, and he is still willing to serve in spite of his injustice. They have dreams, and they need to be interpreted. So what does Joseph do? He interprets the dream of the cupbearer and the baker, and he interprets them rightly. Even though one dream meant death for the baker, well, Joseph, he still remains in prison for 2 years. But then suddenly the cupbearer, he remembers Joseph's name when the Pharaoh has dreams and they cannot be interpreted. You see, that's where we pick it up in Genesis 41. It says, Pharaoh sent for Joseph at once, and he was quickly brought from the prison. After he shaved and changed his clothes, he went in and stood before Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream last night, and no one can tell me what it means. But I have heard you, that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph said, it is beyond my power to do this, but God can tell you what it means and set you at ease. The Bible tells us that Joseph goes on to rightly interpret Pharaoh's dream, but don't miss what Joseph says and believes. Joseph says, it is not me. I can't interpret your dream. It's not about me. It is all about God, because it is God who will do the work. Joseph presents another quality of a person who chooses faith over fear. They are dependent upon God. Let me be honest. If I was stuck in prison and I had an opportunity to get out, I would want to look as good as possible. If Pharaoh asked me, can I interpret a dream? I would say, absolutely, I'm your man. You need an interpreter. I am the guy. But what does Joseph do? He does the right thing, and he says, it's not about me. It's all about God. He gives credit where credit is due. Joseph was a man totally dependent upon God. That's why he would continually choose faith over fear. Why do you think Joseph was so faithful?
I don't know, Nat. I'm just going to say that when you read the story, God continues to show up and improve his situation. So maybe just that. I don't know. That's a good question.
Arnie, what do you think?
I agree.
Yeah, I think if you had the opportunity to sit down with Joseph and ask him why, I have no doubt that he'd give a great answer. But I think it's clear, though, whatever he knew about God, he believed to be true, and whatever he experienced about God, he always pointed back to and held to as he looked forward and to the trials he would go through.
Just a tremendous faith.
And I would say that's an encouragement to us today. We only get what we see in the Bible, right? We can speculate, we can try to put in our own narrative at times, but the reality is he had a story, and if we could sit down with him, we would want to. So it would be true for us in this discussion that we need to be willing to share our stories of God's faithfulness so people could cling on to that and use that to propel them into their faith in God. Would you agree?
Well, I think we talked about that. Whose faith do you kind of steal?
Right.
I think that would go along the lines of that, where you see people struggling through something and they hold tight. So
Okay, clearly the circumstances are different. People are dealing today with the dysfunctional families, right? And they're dealing with trials that they didn't sign up for. And honestly, there are situations that they didn't deserve. I mean, a lot like Joseph. But how would you encourage those people when they're struggling with the dysfunctional family, with the trials and the situations that they didn't ask for or they didn't sign up for? How would you encourage them and coach them to keep trusting in God despite the physical circumstances around them?
I always have this saying, Nat, and it's who owns the problem. And I know we care about our family members, but sometimes you just have to focus on yourself and your own faith. And I always say, as long as people have the gospel and it was delivered kindly, then you got to let God do his work. He's orchestrating such big things. And, you know, when the cupbearer and the baker, we know what maybe happened to the baker. The cupbearer was let go. And he still didn't tell people that Joseph was in prison, but just that orchestration that cupbearer just happened to be there when the Pharaoh was looking for someone to interpret his dreams. I don't think that's any kind of a coincidence. So God's got it sorted. He's orchestrating things. And I know people are frustrating and you love them so much. You want them to change some things about their life or come to Christ. But who owns the problem? If, you know, they're in that, you just got to let them work through some things on their own. You don't have saving power. And I think people put so much pressure on themselves to say that thing, to recite that piece of scripture, and it's just not there, you know. Jesus told people, and they just didn't want to hear it or believe it. But a lot of them came later on, so just let God do the work.
That's excellent. What about you, Arnie?
I'd agree. I think if you focus too much on dysfunctional family members, you become one.
How has dependence upon God benefited your life?
In every way, it's positively. But for me, I'm stubborn. I'm a fixer like you are, Nat. And, you know, I moved away and had my own radio career and things were going well. If there was problems, I felt like I was probably the one solving them. So I was sort of a hard one to come to Christ. But when God broke things down to the point that all I had left was a reliance on him, it really opened my eyes up to that's all I need. So now everything I do is God first, and then everything else just kind of fits into that extra space, which there's not much there.
Yeah, I think it's just it's a complete opening of your eyes, the eyes of your soul.
Yeah, you know, it's all serving him. It's all giving your life to him. So I am fully aware now, my eyes were opened to who is in charge, and I am totally thankful for that. So when you get to a point when you're okay, when you just say, I am not in charge, and you relinquish that, that's when you really start to soar spiritually.
Right. David, Daniel, Joseph, and the many other biblical characters we're studying this month remind us how important it is to trust God regardless of our situation. Now, I am not saying that's easy, but choosing faith over anger or fear or any other emotion is absolutely vital to growing spiritually and experiencing a deeper relationship with God. That's why I wrote Win the Day, Daily Steps for Overcoming Anger and Fear. And today, I'd like to send this encouraging resource to you as a thank you for your gift to support Back to the Bible. Discover what it means to experience true peace and move forward in faith even in the midst of a confusing and chaotic world. Call today to request your copy of Win the Day, Daily Steps for Overcoming Anger and Fear. Here's the number, 1-800-759-2425. Again, that's 1-800-759-2425. Now, if you prefer to give online, visit us at backtothebible.org. That's backtothebible.org. All right, let's return to our study. Joseph was a man totally dependent upon God. He would continually choose faith over fear. And I'm convinced that's because his focus was always on God and not the problem. But in order to have that kind of dependence, it takes great humility. You see, to have that kind of dependence upon God, you have to be humble. One of the humble leaders in the marketplace today is Tony Hsieh. Tony Hsieh is the CEO of the world-famous Zappos. And now, I don't know if you've ever bought a pair of shoes from Zappos before, but out of all my years of consulting and talking with people, I have never heard a bad story about Zappos. Zappos, they are known for their legendary customer service. That's what makes them so good. Well, this excellence in customer service has led to Tony Hsieh's wealth. Tony Hsieh is reportedly worth $840 million. But do you realize the CEO, he does not have a corner suite? He doesn't come to work in a suit and a tie. He wears jeans or shorts and a t-shirt, and he has a cubicle along with everyone he leads. If that wasn't enough, he is reported to live in a silver old-school mobile home in Las Vegas. Rent is $840 a month. That is crazy. That is humble. To be humble, the kind of humble that is totally dependent upon God, we need to see ourselves accurately. That is true humility. You see, it's not thinking less of ourselves. It's not being an Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh where you walk around all the time, going, poor me, I'm miserable, everything bad I deserve, so I'll just stay in this miserable position. Friends, that is not humility. Humility is seeing yourself rightly. It's seeing you as God sees you. How do we do this? How do we become humble? How do we display our humility? I think it begins by remembering we are all made in the image of God. Genesis 1:27 says, "So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them, male and female. He created them." Because we are created by God in his image, we all deserve respect. We will be thoughtful with every word and every action to each other. And second, we become humble when we remember that we are all sinners in need of a Savior. How do I know? Well, the Bible tells us. Romans 3:23 says, "For everyone has sinned. We all fall short of God's glorious standard." So the Bible rightly declares man's sinful nature. But second, you don't have to just look at the Bible for that evidence. Look around you. I have yet to find someone who doesn't sin. My own precious children sin willingly, and they do so with gusto. Have you ever been to a daycare or a Sunday school? You don't have to teach kids to be naughty. You have to teach them to be nice. That's why when I walk in, I'll see a kid grab a toy and kick the kid over and run away. No one had to teach them to do that. They are born sinful. You see, being humble isn't just seeing ourselves accurately. We also need to be in a posture of remembering and desiring God's forgiveness and grace. You see, that is key. We remember who we are. We are made in the image of God. We are sinful in nature, but we also know that we are completely dependent upon God's grace and forgiveness. Ephesians 4:32 says, "Be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you." It is real easy to get dismissive of my sins and become real critical of the other people and their sins. But the reality is that God paid a great price for the forgiveness of sins. My sins were so great that he sent his son to die a painful death on the cross. Every reaction out of anger, every curse word, every lie, every lustful thought was a sin that Christ died for. That is very humbling. Do you realize if I sinned just one time each day till the time I was 80, I'd sin 29,200 times? Well, I hate to break it to you, I don't sin just once a day. When I think about that, that is very humbling. Friends, that is why I am totally dependent upon God. Yes, I was made in His image, but I am totally sinful, and apart from His grace, I have no hope. In reasons I will never know, He chose me and He saved me from my sins, and the same is true for you. For by grace you have been saved through faith. That makes me, and that should make you entirely and thankfully dependent upon God. When I keep this in the forefront of my mind, my humility, it increases. My dependence upon God increases. So I remember and I thankfully embrace that forgiveness. When I do, I am less quick to judge, and I become quicker to forgive others. This is exactly what Joseph did. In chapters 42 through 45, Joseph becomes reacquainted with his brothers. Most of us would want to humiliate. We would want to punish someone who tried to destroy our life. But not Joseph. Joseph was faithful and dependent upon God. So what did Joseph do? He forgave them. Again, that takes faith. Joseph, yet again, he chose faith. We've covered a lot of ground here. Humility, dependence, forgiveness. What keeps you dependent upon God?
When I became a believer, when I was 47 years old, one of the things that I can remember to this day in my prayer life after that was, Lord, I pray that you keep me in the front lines of the battle. Don't ever let me become so that I feel so comfortable and in a situation where I'm really going nowhere. So keep me in the front lines, because otherwise I was so passionately afraid of becoming a burned out Christian, like many people I thought I knew at the time. And then my testimony would actually be a testimony in the wrong direction. And so that was my prayer, is keep me on the front lines for as long as I live, Lord.
So you weren't afraid of burnout from the battle. You were more afraid of the burnout from the vacation.
Oh, no kidding. Because, standing still in the spiritual sense is actually moving backwards. So to me, if the best way to grow is get in there, get in the battlefield, don't sit back and take a bunch of courses, go to seminars, all of this stuff, even though they're good, they have their place, but it's front line, keep me in the front lines at all time, Lord.
Wow.
I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with it. And I would like to say that from an outsider looking in, Arnie, he definitely has answered your prayer, because Satan's trying to kill you off every other day, but you just keep going. No, for me, I'd rather much be in the game than sitting on the sideline. So when I'm on the sideline, I start getting antsy. And
oh, me too. Me too.
Yeah.
I try to make things happen.
Yeah, I think that posture to want to be in the middle of the battle and to be in the middle of the pain actually will always keep us in that place of dependence upon God. Not an easy place to be, but an essential place to be. And I think even C.S. Lewis's quote about pain even applies to us. He said, "Pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." And so that is so true for non-believers, to get them to a point of dependence upon God. But how much more beneficial is it for us as believers to keep us dependent upon him? And that's a good place to be, as he's our Heavenly Father. Well, we also talked about forgiveness. How has forgiveness changed how you view and treat the people around you?
One of the more sobering moments that I've had with God is when he was like, I forgave you, so you must forgive others. And then to really reflect back on my life, that how much forgiveness I have been given is really sobering. So, you sort of forget what a jerk you are sometimes. And so I notice I always put my spiritual walk next to somebody like Jeffrey Dahmer, where, well, I haven't been that bad, but you really are. You're awful. You're an awful person.
Yep.
And so I extend that forgiveness. The other thing that I'll say about forgiveness, Nat, I was really thinking about just how hard it is sometimes in certain situations where you've been hurt so deeply by somebody that is supposed to love you, or that you're maybe in a relationship with, say, a family member or whatever it is, that forgiveness, you don't come to Christ and then you just start forgiving people. It's a process. Mm-hmm. And people really need to understand that you forgive and you mean it. You really forgive it. But then Satan pulls those tricks where he reminds you of all the things this person's done to you. But sometimes it's helpful for me to remember all the good things the person has done, at the times they have shown up. And maybe there aren't those, but forgiveness is a process. And so you go, nope, not today, Satan. And you forgive them again. And you forgive them, I think, all the way to heaven, right? Mm-hmm. It's in your heart. You truly want to forgive somebody.
Arnie, how does our choice of fear or faith impact how we treat the transgressions of others?
It has tremendous impact. We have to act in faith. We have to act in knowing that God is in charge not only of our lives, but in other people's lives. And so to come across out of fear is just totally self-defeating for everybody involved.
When we're dependent upon God, God can do great things. We saw that in the life of Joseph, and we've heard it from the lives of our discussion partners today. Before we close, here is a quick reminder to call and request your copy of Win the Day, Daily Steps for Overcoming Anger and Fear. I wrote this devotional to help you navigate the chaotic times we live in with faith, rather than damaging emotions. And today, we'd like to send you a copy as a thanks for your gift to Back to the Bible. Make your request at 1-800-759-2425, 1-800-759-2425. Or, if you prefer to give online, visit backtothebible.org. Well, that's it for today, but we'll be back again tomorrow for the Friday edition of Back to the Bible. Until then, I'm Nat Crawford, encouraging you to stand firm, stand faithful, and stand on God's Word. If today's episode has helped you move forward in faith, be sure to share it with a friend. And would you consider leaving a rating or review? We would love to hear from you.